All right, let's dive into these British holidays. Something tells me you're going to love this.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking Bonfire Night, Boxing Day, Christmas, all that good stuff.
Hmm.
But first, we got to ask, where did these celebrations come from?
Well, it's interesting. They're like little windows into British history. Each one tells a story about the people, their beliefs, how different cultures all kind of blended together over time.
It's like each holiday is a history lesson in disguise.
Exactly.
And speaking of history, let's kick things off with a bang, shall we? Bonfire Night, November 5th, fireworks, bonfires,
Right.
the whole shebang.
Yeah.
But I got a feeling there's more to it than meets the eye.
Oh, absolutely. You got to go back to 1605 to this thing called the Gunpowder Plot.
Okay.
Imagine this. A group of Catholics, they weren't too keen on King James I, wanted to, well, blow up the Houses of Parliament.
Whoa, hold up. Are you serious?
Yeah. And the ringleader of this whole thing, Guy Fawkes. The name that's basically become Bonfire Night itself.
Wait, so this whole holiday is celebrating a foiled terrorist attack? That's kind of wild.
It's a bit of a trip, right?
Yeah.
So Fawkes and his crew, they hid 36 barrels of gunpowder under Parliament. Can you imagine if they'd actually pulled it off?
Chaos.
Total chaos. Luckily, somebody caught wind of the plan, and Fawkes was caught, guarding all that gunpowder.
Like a ticking time bomb.
Yeah.
So how does a near disaster turn into, like, a yearly celebration?
Well, King James, I'm sure he breathed a huge sigh of relief. He decided to make November 5th a day of Thanksgiving. And over time, well, it morphed into Bonfire Night.
Clever.
The bonfires, they symbolize the disaster they dodged. And the fireworks, I like to think of it as like letting off a little celebratory steam.
I like it.
Oh, and you can't forget the effigies of Guy Fawkes, the ultimate good riddance symbol.
Yeah, the effigies. I heard they don't just burn Guy Fawkes anymore, though, right?
Yeah, it's become a bit more lighthearted. Some places they build these huge 9-meter tall effigies of like celebrities, politicians.
No way.
Yeah. Last year they burned an effigy of Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary.
Oh, man. It's like a giant roast, but with fire. But all jokes aside, the gunpowder plot, it did have a real impact on British society, didn't it?
Definitely. It made people really wary of Catholics, led to some pretty harsh laws against them. I mean, King James even made the November 5th Thanksgiving mandatory. That's how big of a deal it was.
Wow. So Bonfire Night, it's like this yearly reminder of a pivotal moment in history, even if it's all fireworks and fun now.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what it's like to actually be there.
Yeah.
The sights, the sounds, it must be quite the experience.
Oh, it's incredible. Picture this. A crisp November night, you're bundled up by the bonfire.
Okay.
The air smells like smoke. You've got fireworks exploding overhead.
Wow.
It's more than just a visual thing, It's like this shared experience steeped in history.
That's awesome. And speaking of experiences, we got to talk about the food. What kind of goodies do people eat on Bonfire Night?
Oh, man, you're in for a treat. Every region's got its specialties. Like up in Yorkshire, they've got this thing called parkin. It's like a ginger cake, but it's super sticky and delicious.
Ooh, love ginger.
And then down south, toffee apples are a must. And in Lancashire, they go for something a little different. Black peas and vinegar.
Black peas and vinegar. Now, that's a combination I've never heard of.
It's an acquired taste.
Yeah.
What about you? Which one would you try?
I'm a sucker for ginger, so I'm going straight for that parkin. But hey, while we're on the topic of food, let's move on to another holiday known for its feast, Boxing Day. And before you say anything, I know it's not just about snagging those after-Christmas deals.
You got it. It's actually rooted in something pretty heartwarming.
Oh.
Go back to Victorian England. After Christmas, employers would give their servants these Christmas boxes filled with, like, gifts, money, as a thank you for all their hard work.
That's so sweet.
Even tradespeople, they'd get tips from their customers.
It's nice to know that generosity has always been a part of this holiday.
Absolutely. But there's more to it. Boxing Day also falls on St. Stephen's Day, a religious holiday. So you've got this cool blend of like history, charity, religious stuff, and then of course the modern shopping sprees.
Wow, it's like a holiday with multiple personalities. So it's about giving back, reflecting, and maybe a little retail therapy.
You got it. And that's the beauty of these holidays. They change, they adapt, but their heart stays the same.
I like that. Speaking of unique traditions, let's switch gears to something a little more somber. Remembrance Day, every year on November 11th.
Remembrance Day, it makes you think about the sacrifices made in past conflicts.
Yeah.
It started as Armistice Day, marking the end of World War I, but now it's for everyone who died in any war. It's a day for, like, the whole nation to pause, remember, and be thankful.
And one of the biggest symbols of Remembrance Day has got to be that red poppy.
Right.
People wear them on their coats. It's really powerful. What's the meaning behind it?
It comes from a poem in Flanders Fields.
Okay.
A World War I doctor wrote it. He talked about these poppies growing in the battlefields, like life persisting amidst all that death.
Wow.
So wearing one, it's like a visual reminder of the sacrifices and also a hope for peace.
It's incredible how something as simple as a flower can hold so much meaning.
It is.
But it's not just the poppy, right?
Yeah.
What else do people do for Remembrance Day?
One big tradition is the 2-minute silence at 11 a.m. on November 11th.
Why 11 a.m.?
Because that's when World War I officially ended, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month.
Oh, wow.
It's a time to just stop, think about those who served and those who never came home.
It's amazing how long that tradition has lasted, over a century.
Yeah.
And it's not just in Britain, is it?
You're right. A lot of Commonwealth countries observe it too, sometimes with different names. Canada calls it Poppy Day.
I did not.
And even within Britain, they have Remembrance Sunday on the second Sunday of November.
Interesting. It's like these traditions, they spread and change a bit, but the meaning stays the same.
Yeah.
Speaking of changing, let's talk about a holiday that's seen a whole lot of change. Christmas. It started as a religious thing, but now it's this huge celebration.
Oh, yeah. Christmas. It's the perfect example of traditions adapting over time. It's a mix of the old and the new, always changing, always kind of magical.
So what was it like way back when, before all the lights and presents?
Imagine medieval England. Christmas was all about religion, fasting, praying, commemorating Jesus' birth.
Right.
It wasn't until the Middle Ages that things got a little more, shall we say, festive.
Festive how?
Well, kings would throw these huge Christmas feasts. Lots of food, entertainment, gift-giving. It was a big display of wealth and generosity.
So Christmas has always been a big deal. But I'm guessing the Christmas we know now, with the decorated trees, presents everywhere, we can thank the Victorians for that, right?
You're spot on. The Victorians, they loved their traditions and doing things in style. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, they were like the trendsetters of their time, especially when it came to holidays.
Like the whole Christmas tree thing. They pretty much brought that to England, right?
Exactly. Prince Albert was German, and he brought that tradition with him. And of course, everyone wanted to be like the royals.
Makes sense.
They made Christmas cards popular, put a big emphasis on gifts, and those big family get-togethers, that was them too. It's amazing how much of their influence is still around today.
It's like they took Christmas from solemn and religious to let's decorate everything and eat pudding. But they kept that religious aspect in there too, didn't they?
For sure. It's a big part of British Christmas, that blend of religious and secular. You've got carol singing and midnight mass happening at the same time as Christmas markets, houses lit up like spaceships. It's a whole thing.
And speaking of lighting things up, we talked about Bonfire Night. But British Christmas is a visual feast too. All those twinkling lights, those perfectly decorated trees. And don't even get me started on the Christmas market.
The Christmas market.
They look incredible.
Imagine walking through, the smell of roasted chestnuts and gingerbread in the air.
Okay, now I'm hungry.
Festive music everywhere, stalls overflowing with handmade gifts, ornaments, all kinds of treats. It's pure Christmas magic.
I bet. And then there's the whole tradition of decorating houses. I've seen pictures of houses in the UK lit up like they're landing strips for Santa.
Some people go all out. It's like a friendly competition to see who can create the most Christmassy scene. And it works. It transforms the streets into something out of a movie.
It's really cool how these holidays, even with their sometimes serious origins or how much they've changed, still bring people together.
It's the power of tradition, wouldn't you say?
Totally.
It's like these shared experiences, even if they're centuries old, they link us to something bigger, something beyond ourselves, our history, our community, the people who came before us. It's pretty amazing.
I love that. Each little custom, whether it's lighting a bonfire or hanging an ornament, it's like this tiny thread, and together they make this giant tapestry of shared culture.
Exactly. It is, yeah. And it's not just threads of tradition. We're talking about threads from all over the world. British Christmas. It's got influences woven in from everywhere.
Well, that makes sense, right? Especially in a place like Britain with its history. It's like a cultural crossroads.
Exactly. We were just talking about Prince Albert and the Christmas tree.
Right, from Germany.
And even Santa Claus, he's got Dutch roots. Sinterklaas, who knew?
It's fascinating how these things travel and transform, you know?
It is. It's like a global game of cultural telephone.
I like that. But instead of getting distorted, it just keeps getting more interesting. So we've got German trees, a Dutch Santa. What else has found its way into British Christmas?
Believe it or not, even Halloween has ties to British and Irish traditions. Those spooky stories, pumpkins, trick-or-treating, those have deep roots in the British Isles.
No way. I had no idea. I always thought of Halloween as an American thing.
Well, it's got a much longer history than that, but it goes to show you these holidays, they're like patchwork quilts. Bits and pieces from different times and places, all stitched together.
I love that analogy. And speaking of patchwork, British culture is becoming more diverse all the time.
Absolutely.
So are we seeing newer traditions starting to weave their way in?
Oh, definitely. Diwali, for example, is becoming more and more common in the UK.
Right, the Festival of Lights?
Yep. It's a beautiful celebration, and it reflects the growing South Asian community in Britain.
That's really cool.
And of course, you can't forget about Notting Hill Carnival. It's got Caribbean roots, and it's become a huge part of the British summer.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about that. It looks amazing.
It's a blast. So it's not just about incorporating old traditions into the new, it's about embracing those new traditions and making them part of the culture.
It's like British culture is this constantly evolving thing, always adding new threads to the tapestry.
Exactly. And that makes it even more fascinating to study, don't you think?
Totally. Speaking of fascinating, we've covered bonfire night treats, but what about Christmas dinner? That's a whole other world.
Oh man, get ready. We're talking about a feast for the ages. We've got the traditional roast turkey, of course.
Classic.
But then there are mince pies, Christmas pudding with brandy butter, Yorkshire pudding.
Okay, slow down. Now I'm really hungry.
It's a lot. And every single dish has a story behind it. Take mince pies, for instance.
What about them?
They used to be filled with meat. Can you believe it?
No way.
Yep. But now it's more of a sweet filling with dried fruits and spices and brandy. And the spices, they actually symbolize the gifts the wise men brought to Jesus. It's amazing how even a little pie can be steeped in history.
It's true. Food and holidays, they go hand in hand.
Oh.
So we've got the pies. What else is on the menu?
Oh man, where do I even start? Yorkshire puddings, cranberry sauce, bread sauce.
I'm hearing a lot of sauces.
Oh yeah, it's not Christmas dinner without a good gravy boat or two. And we can't forget the mulled wine. It's a symphony of flavors, you know.
It sounds amazing. And it's not just the flavors, right? It's the whole experience, the smells, the company, the atmosphere.
Exactly. Food has this amazing power to transport you.
Totally. Like one bite of your grandma's stuffing and you're instantly back at her table.
And that's it. It's about those core memories, those sensory experiences that connect us to our past and to each other. It's pretty powerful stuff.
It really is. So we've talked about bonfires, Boxing Day, Christmas dinner. We've covered a lot of ground. Out of all of it, is there a tradition that really stands out to you, something you find particularly interesting?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm always amazed by how these traditions change over time. But if I had to pick one, maybe Bonfire Night.
Really? What is it about Bonfire Night?
Well, it came from such a dark time in British history, all that religious tension, the threat of violence, but somehow it transformed into this celebration of togetherness.
I see what you mean.
It just goes to show you, even out of something really divisive, something scary, something like the gunpowder plot, you can find unity. It gives me hope, you know?
I know what you mean. It's a good reminder that traditions can heal old wounds. It really makes you think about how powerful traditions are, right? Even after all these years, people still gather for Bonfire Night, build those bonfires, set off fireworks. It's like this giant collective sigh of relief that just echoes through time.
And we can't forget about the food. After a night of bonfires and fireworks, what could be better than a warm slice of parkin, that sticky ginger cake? Or a toffee apple? It's like those traditions are keeping history alive, one delicious bite at a time.
Speaking of keeping things alive, we've talked a lot about how these holidays have changed over time. But what about the future? British culture is always evolving. What do you think will happen to these traditions as the world gets more and more interconnected?
Ooh, that's a good question. We've already seen how things from other cultures have become part of British traditions, like with the Christmas tree and Santa Claus. As Britain becomes even more multicultural, I think we'll see even more blending and mixing of traditions.
So it's not just about adopting traditions from other places. It's more like weaving them into the fabric of what's already there, right?
Yeah, like Diwali celebrations are becoming more common in the UK, reflecting the South Asian community.
Right.
And of course, Notting Hill Carnival, with its Caribbean roots, is a big part of the British summer now. So these traditions aren't just existing alongside the older ones, they're becoming part of what it means to celebrate in Britain.
I love that. It's like this beautiful fusion where different cultures are sharing and adapting and creating something new and exciting together.
Exactly. That's what's so cool about studying traditions. They're not stuck in the past, they're constantly changing and evolving.
It makes you wonder, though, how these evolving British traditions might influence how people celebrate all over the world.
It's like a ripple effect. What starts in one place can spread and change and inspire people in ways you might never expect.
It really is fascinating to think about. Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into British holidays. We've explored some pretty amazing traditions, from the fiery history of Bonfire Night to the generosity of Boxing Day, from the solemn reflection of Remembrance Day to the magic and sparkle of Christmas.
We've covered a lot of ground, but even after all that, we've only scratched the surface. There's always more to learn and explore, right?
Absolutely. But for now, we hope you've enjoyed this little journey. We've shared some fascinating history, some delicious food for thought, and maybe even inspired you to start some new traditions of your own.
Until next time, keep those questions coming, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep the spirit of celebration alive.